Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Bible in 1 year with the preacher's husband. Today we're going through Judges chapters 3, 4, and 5. And we're also tomorrow going to go through chapters 6 and 7. So chapter 6 and 7 for tomorrow. So today we start off right away with the Lord testing Israel. Now it's important to remember the cycle of sin in Judges, okay? Peace in the land, Israel serves the Lord. Then Israel does something evil in the eyes of the Lord. Then God punishes Israel basically by giving them over to their enemies, and they become enslaved over and over again. Israel cries out to the Lord, and the Lord has mercy on them and raises up a judge who delivers them from these tyrants or the bad guys, and then there's peace again in the land. This is the cycle of sin in Judges. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Now, right off the bat, the Lord starts to test Israel, and Israel fails. The Israelites did what was evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as the cycle said. So the Lord sells them over to King Cushan, with a big long name here. Israel cries out to the Lord, save us, save us. So what does he do? He sends Othniel, the very first judge, to deliver them. And Othniel went out to battle for the Lord, and he wins. So then they had peace in the land for 40 years. Thus ends that cycle in Judges, that cycle of sin. But after the cycle was over and Othniel is gone, Ehud comes along, because guess what happens? The Israelites again did what was evil in the eyes of the Lord. So they are taken over by their enemies, King Eglon. Now, at this point, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and he raised up Ehud, son of Gera, and he was a left-handed Benjamite. Now, that is an important note to take, that he was a left-handed Benjamite as a deliverer for them. The Israelites sent him with a tribute to the king. So they were sending Ehud up to the king with a tribute or money for him. Well, Ehud made a double-edged sword, and he hid that sword under his right thigh, under his clothes there, as he goes in. So he goes in to give this tribute to him, and then he tells the king that he has a secret message for him. So the king, after he has accepted this tribute, is really happy because he's gotten all this money. And he goes, all right, everybody leave. He's got a secret message for me. So they all leave. And what happens? He goes up to the king. Ehud goes up to the king and says, I have a message from God for you. And with his left hand, he pulls out the sword, the double-edged sword that he had on his right thigh, and he stabs him in the belly. And of course, this is a big old fat dude, so the sword goes all the way in his belly, handle and all. And then Ehud escapes. He gets out. And then later on, the king's people come back in thinking, sure, it's quiet in there. And they see him laying there dead, but he is gone. So Ehud goes back and he tells the Israelites, follow me, because the Lord has handed over your enemies, the Moabites, to you. So they follow him, because they end up going to battle with these guys, and they strike down over 10,000 Moabites, and they win. Not a single Moabite escaped, and Moab became subject to Israel that day, because in the land at that point had peace again. There's the end of that cycle, peace. And this time it was peace for 80 years. Now after Ehud left, Shamgar comes into the picture. And there's just a little blurb about him. But he became a judge, it says here. He also delivered evil, striking down 600 Philistines with a cattle prod. Now, if you know what a cattle prod is, that seems like a pretty tall order for one dude to kill 600 Philistines with a cattle prod. But that's what he did. So now we get into chapter 4. The Israelites once again start the cycle. They did what was evil in the sight of the Lord for the 4th time in a row. The Lord sold them to King Jabin. And then the Israelites cried out to the Lord. Then Deborah, a prophetess of the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at the time. A female. Go figure that. Here's Deborah. Here's some pictures and depictions of Deborah for you to look at as we go through the story here. And it says that the Israelites went up to her to settle disputes. So she was a judge at the time. She summoned Barak, son of Abinoam, however you say that. I'm terrible at pronunciations. From Kadesh in Naphtali. And she says, hasn't God told you to go and deploy your troops on Mount Tabor? And he's like, well, yeah, he did, but I ain't going to go unless you go with me. If you go with me, I'll do this. But if you don't go with me, I won't. And she said, well, I'll go, but don't you understand that there's not going to be any honor on the road that you're about to take, because the Lord will sell Sisera to a woman. Wait a minute. The Lord will sell Sisera to a woman. Remember that, because that's important. So Deborah got up and went with him because he seemed okay with that. He's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm golden. Let's go do this. So you got to also keep in mind that Heber, the Kenite, had moved away from the Kenites. All right? He's not around. So think about that guy. Then Deborah says to Barak, go. This is the day the Lord has handed Sisera over to you. So Barak does. He did that. And guess what happens? He beats them all. They beat them all, but Sisera left his chariot and left on foot. Sisera is the leader here of this army. Now Barak pursued him, and the whole army of Sisera fell. Not a single one was left. Meanwhile, Sisera had fled on foot to the tent of Jael. Now Jael was the wife of Heber the Kenite. Remember, he's not around. But they had a peace agreement with each other. Sisera had a peace agreement with these people. So Jael went out to greet Sisera and says, come on in, my lord. Come on in with me. Don't be afraid. And he comes in, and she covers him with a blanket because she notices he's exhausted. And he says, please give me a little water to drink. But she does better than that. She gives him some milk. Says, here, we got milk. Take that instead. And then she covers him back up and says, you just rest. And basically he says, well, you stand at the entrance to the tent. If anybody comes and asks if there's a man in here, you just say no. While he was sleeping from exhaustion, though, Heber's wife, Jael, took a tent peg, and she grabbed a hammer, and then she went silently into Sisera. And she hammered the tent peg into his temple and drove it into the ground, and he died. Now when Barak arrived, and Jael went out to greet him, she says, come, I will show you the man that you're looking for. So he went in there in the tent with her, and there was Sisera laying dead with a tent peg through his temple. Now, you remember what Deborah had said? The Lord will sell Sisera to a woman. It happened. She, the prophetess, had predicted what was going to happen here. God had told her what was going to happen in advance, and she knew it. And the power of the Israelites continued to increase and increase and increase through her. And then comes Deborah's song in chapter 5. Chapter 5, the whole chapter, is Deborah's song. Now, when God intervenes decisively in the lives of his people, a typical response to that is for people to sing his praises. We learned about that in Exodus chapter 15. But here, Deborah and Barak together lead the people in a song of celebration and thanksgiving that focused on the Lord as their central character. And right off the bat in chapter 5, verse 2, it says, when the leaders lead in Israel, when the people volunteer, blessed be the Lord. We go through this entire song. In the very last verse of this song, it says, and the land had peace for 40 years, thus ending the fourth cycle of sin and judges. Now, Deborah, I asked the question from the beginning, can a woman lead? Can a woman be a leader? Can women be leaders? Can they? Well, clearly in the Bible, the answer is yes. Now, Deborah was the fourth and only female judge, but let's dig a little deeper into Deborah. Deborah, the name itself means bee, and I find that very appropriate because Deborah seemed to be a very busy bee. She was a super busy person. The Bible tells us that she was married to a man named Lapidoth. Oh, there's no overt mention of children or anything from her or him. But we also learn that she's a prophetess, which means she's kind of like Miriam that came before her in Exodus chapter 15, and a bit like Anna from Luke chapter 2, verse 36 that came after her. So she was a prophetess, and she regularly received divine revelation from God for her people. So she was the one that was conversing with God, so to speak, and he was guiding the people through her. Somewhere along the way, Deborah added the job of judge to her role as wife and prophetess. Now, during her stint as a judge, though, Deborah kept an office. Literally, it was a palm tree between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. Remember, we read that in Judges chapter 4, verse 5 just now. There, she likely shared God's truth, offered wise counsel, and boosted national morale, and presided over disputes her people in almost the same way that a mom would referee squabbles between her and her kids, or between her kids. So she was kind of a mother figure, and it even says this in Judges chapter 5 during her song, verse 7. It says, villages were deserted. They were deserted in Israel until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. A mother. Because a mother is a leader. A mother is one of the two main leaders in the family, a father and a mother. They both have roles. In each family, their roles are different, but they're both leaders regardless. And of course, you remember when he says the Lord will sell Sisera to a woman. Well, once the troops were in position, Deborah gave the signal and Barak led the charge. Now, she wasn't the military leader. Barak was the military leader, but she was the one that inspired Barak to lead. So she was essentially the leader of Barak. And deliverance came largely because of Deborah's bold leadership. And it seems some timely divine flooding as well. As we read in Judges chapter 5 verse 21 here, it says, the river Kishon swept them away, the ancient river, the river Kishon. March on, my soul, in strength. That's funny. That water once again has swept people away. We've seen the great flood. We've seen the parting of the Red Sea for Moses. We've seen it happen for Joshua, and now we've seen it again happen for Deborah and Barak here as they see the river sweep them away. I found that very interesting. Now, following this overwhelming victory, Deborah composed this vivid song, and who knew that such a busy prophetess and a wife and a judge would also have such a gift to be a songwriter. Mostly Deborah's song is humble. It avoids any hint of self-congratulations, beginning with the words, when the leaders lead in Israel, when the people volunteer, blessed be the Lord. In other words, victory is a team effort and ultimately the work of God. Now, our main takeaway from this today, to me, at least one conclusion that we can draw from the life of Deborah is that certain people are giving rare leadership skills and abilities. God graces each one of us with unique abilities and skills. In certain situations, we are called to lead, and in other situations, we're expected to volunteer and to follow. This much we know. We are all called by God to play a role that we all each have a part. That includes men and women alike in leadership roles. And I'm constantly reminded of that old saying, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. I hope this has touched you. If it has, please click the like button and that subscribe button, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for another episode of the Bible in 1 year with the Preacher's Husband. We'll see you then.